everybody, Byron Cox coming to you with day 3 of our Read Daily Personal Development Challenge. Out of this book, the new Psycho-Cybernetics. Last time we left off on page 5. I'm going to show you that page because it has an image on it that I want you to either jot down or just either memorize. You see that image there? Because as soon as I read, I'm going to read the editor's note right below it. So take notes, pause it real quick if you have to. I want you to write that down in your notes. Pretty good image. Let's get right into it. Numerous case studies have shown that you're never too young or too old to change your self-image or start to live a new, amazingly different life. Editor's note. Here's another illustration of how the self-image operates. Picture us living inside 2 boxes. The line farthest out, the solid line, represents real or realistic limits. The dotted line in the first drawing, shown tightly confining self, represents self-imposed limits. The area between the two is your area or range of underutilized potential. As you discover the means of strengthening and liberating your self-image, you move the dotted line closer to the solid line, permitting greater use of your true potential. Success from the inside out, not the outside in. One of the reasons it seems so difficult for a person to change habits, personality, or a way of life has been that nearly all efforts at change have been directed to the circumference of the self, so to speak, rather than to the center. Numerous patients have said to me something like the following. If you're talking about positive thinking, I tried that before, and it just doesn't work for me. However, a little questioning invariably brings out that these individuals employed positive thinking or attempted to employ it either on particular external circumstances or on some particular habit or character defect. Like, I will get that job. I will be more calm and relaxed in the future. This business venture will turn out right for me, and so on. But they never thought to change their thinking of the self that was to accomplish these things. Jesus warned us about the folly of putting a patch of new material on an old garment or putting new wine into old bottles. Positive thinking cannot be used effectively as a patch to the same old self-image. In fact, it is literally impossible to really think positively about a particular situation as long as you hold a negative concept of self. Numerous experiences have shown that once the concept of self is changed, other things consistent with the new concept of old self are accomplished easily and without strain. A system of ideas. One of the earliest and most convincing experiments along this line was conducted by the late Prescott Lecky, one of the pioneers in self-image psychology. Lecky conceived that the personality has a system of ideas, all of which must be consistent with each other. Ideas that are inconsistent with the system are rejected, not believed, and not accepted. They're not acted on. Ideas that seem to be inconsistent with the system are accepted. At the very center of this system of ideas, the keystone, or the base on which all else is built, is the individual's self-image, or his conception of self. Lecky was a school teacher and had an opportunity to test his theory on thousands of students. He theorized that if a student had trouble learning a certain subject, it could be because, from the student's point of view, it would be inconsistent for him to learn it. Lecky believed, however, that if the student could be induced to change his self-definition, his learning ability should also change. This proved to be the case. One student who misspelled 55 words out of 100 and flunked so many subjects that he lost credit for a year made a general average of 91 the next year and became one of the best spellers in school. A girl who was dropped from one college because of poor grades entered Columbia and became a straight-A student. A boy who was told by a testing bureau that he had no aptitude for English won honorable mention the next year for a literary prize. The trouble with these students was not that they were dumb or lacking in basic aptitudes. The trouble was an inadequate self-image. I don't have a mathematical mind. I'm just naturally a poor speller. They identified with their mistakes and failures. Instead of saying, I failed that test, factual and descriptive, they concluded, I am a failure. Instead of saying, I flunked that subject, they said, I may flunk out. For those who are interested in learning more of Lecky's work, be sure to find a copy of his book, Self-Consistency, A Theory of Personality. Lecky also used the same method to cure students of such habits as nail biting and stuttering. My own files contain case histories just as convincing. The woman who was so afraid of strangers that she seldom ventured out of the house and who now makes her living as a public speaker. The salesman who had already prepared a letter of resignation because he just wasn't cut out for selling, and 6 months later he was the one man on a force of 100 salesmen. The minister who was considering retirement because nerves and the pressure of preparing sermon every week were getting him down, and who now delivers an average of 3 outside talks a week in addition to his weekly sermon, and doesn't know he has a nerve in his body. Following Dr. Lecky's breakthrough thinking on this subject, born from observation as well as my own observations and thoughts chronicled in the earlier editions of this book, a mountain of more sophisticated scientific research and anecdotal evidence has led to the acceptance of the controlling self-image by most of the academic psychological community. How a plastic surgeon became interested in self-image psychology, my story. Offhand, there would seem to be little or no connection between surgery and psychology. Yet, it was the work of the plastic surgeon that first hinted at the existence of self-image and raised certain questions that led to important psychological knowledge. When I first began the practice of plastic surgery many years ago, I was amazed by the dramatic and sudden changes in character and personality that often resulted when a facial defect was corrected. Changing the physical image in many instances appeared to create an entirely new person. In case after case, the scalpel that I held in my hand became a magic wand that transformed not only patients' appearance, but their whole life. The shy and retiring became bold and courageous. A stupid boy changed into an alert, bright youngster who went on to become an executive with a prominent firm. A salesman who had lost his touch and his faith in himself became a model of self-confidence. And perhaps the most startling of all was the habitual hardened criminal who changed almost overnight from an incorrigible, one who had never shown any desire to change, into a model prisoner, one who wanted parole and went on to assume a responsible role in society. Some 60 years ago, I reported many such case histories in my book, New Faces, New Futures, written more for my peers than the public. Following its publication and similar articles in leading magazines, I was besieged with questions by criminologists, psychologists, sociologists, and psychiatrists. They asked questions that I could not answer, but they did start me on a search. Strangely enough, I learned as much from my failures as from my successes, if not more. It was easy to explain the successes. The boy with the 2 big ears, who had been told that he looked like a taxicab with both doors open, had been ridiculed all his life, often cruelly. Association with others meant humiliation and pain. Why shouldn't he avoid social contacts? Why shouldn't he become afraid of people and retire into himself? Terribly afraid to express himself in any way, he became known as stupid. When his ears were corrected, it would seem only natural that since the cause of his embarrassment and humiliation had been removed, he should assume a normal role in life, which he did. Or consider the salesman who suffered a facial disfigurement as a result of an automobile accident. Each morning, when he shaved, he could see the horrible disfigured scar on his cheek. and the grotesque twist to his mouth. For the first time in his life, he became painfully self-conscious. He was ashamed of himself and felt that his appearance must be repulsive to others. The scar became an obsession with him. He was different from other people. He began to wonder what others were thinking of him. Soon, his self-image was even more mutilated than his face. He began to lose confidence in himself. He became bitter and hostile. Soon, almost all attention was directed toward himself, and his primary goal became the protection of his ego and the avoidance of situations that might bring humiliation. It is easy to understand how the correction of his facial disfigurement and the restoration of a normal face would overnight change this man's entire attitude and outlook. His feelings about himself resulted in greater success in his work. That's where we'll leave off today on page 8 of Psycho-Cybernetics. See you in the next video.